we create meaningful impact and when we do things that are for a higher good, it creates this ripple effect.
Hey, Tracey Breeden. Guess what? You're the second guest on Trust Issues, episode number 2 here. Really enjoyed talking about the sort of general state of the trust and safety industry before. And so the way that we first met was it started before COVID, right? The shoot was right
Uh-huh.
when COVID started, but the whole project. So just to set it off is we at Storyfarm and Trust and Safety made a set of videos for Uber that are played all over the world for Uber drivers, and they are meant to address really challenging situations that can occur inside those vehicles with the people in them. But let's just start out, Tracey, from the top. So what was the origin of the whole idea of we need to make these videos, this is something Uber needs to do?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I don't know that I've been asked to do episode 1 and 2, John. So I feel
You're a
like, you
star.
know what?
You
I'm
know,
honored that you have asked me to do that.
the
And
honor is ours.
yes, I think it was back in when we actually started create or when we created them. I think it was in about 2019. So it's been a
Yeah.
while. It was before I turned 50,
Yeah.
and
I just turned 50 last week. It's a feeling.
oh,
It's a
oh,
vibe. Sure.
yeah. Now you're in the club with me now.
Yeah.
So it was back in 2019. We had, my team and I had created quite a bit before we got to that point, as far as just initiatives, technology, you name it, kind of really building to that. And the goal, one of my visions and goals was always to be able to have education that every driver would have to take. And it really, we worked very hard to build the case to get approval to do those things, and I'm thankful that Uber did it because there's not a lot of platforms who do that. And
Yeah.
Lyft also, created education as well. So it was great to see both of those companies who are leaders in the rideshare industry take that step. But it took some work to get everybody on board to believe that this was the right thing to do as far as creating this and making it mandatory, and making sure that every driver received that education in their onboarding process. And it's still in place, which is super cool. It's this, that education. I actually went back and watched all of that education in within the last 12 months, and I was so proud to actually see it again. And those videos are so well done, and we used, actual drivers to create those videos. So it was powerful to see real, Uber drivers talking about these things. But it's so meaningful because it not only went over all the community guidelines and created scenarios, and it did just a beautiful job of helping drivers understand these situations and educate them, and understand what respect looks like in that space. Not that all drivers are not respectful, but that there might be things in conversations that make people uncomfortable that you're not really thinking about, when you're talking to them. So it went from those kind of things all the way to the most serious of incidents. And I do want to acknowledge, I mean, this is April. This is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So it's an important month. We actually launched those videos around this time. I mean, it was such a beautiful undertaking. It took a while to get to that point, and then we actually achieved it. And to see those out there and still a part of the process, onboarding process for all drivers, is just such a powerful thing. Because think about all I mean, that education is being used, not just in the U.S. but beyond, but all the people that it's reaching, and it's educating beyond the platform and driving, but helping them understand an issue that they may have not really had a lot of understanding around before. So there's bigger impact beyond the platform, John, and you were a part of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, it's so cool. So for some of the viewers won't know what it's basically like 6 modules that add up to more than 30 minutes of content. Each one is sort of specific to some different things, and we all ride in Ubers, but I don't think a lot of people think about really what the driver might see throughout the course of a day or a night or a week, and
Yes.
all the situations that can occur. Like something that I was always surprised by is like you're not supposed to ask someone like, like about where they live or
Yeah.
is it, you know, like
Right.
there's all kinds of questions or even the where are you from, all those sort of questions that like you
Yeah.
might sort of casually banter with, and you realize that these actually could cause situations that you're not expecting, and things to stay away from.
Yeah.
And so cool to think that it's still in use today, 3 or 4 years after we made it,
Yeah.
that every Uber driver on earth has to watch that stuff.
And what's powerful about it too is like we're talking about 30 minutes of content. So, most things in today's world is here's your terms of service that nobody reads or your community guidelines that nobody reads, and they may not even have to check a box. Even if they do, they don't read it. Most people are not reading that stuff. They're checking the
Yeah.
box and leaving it, and they're going on. So the fact that they have to, watch these and you can't fast forward them, and they're really, actually really good. And a lot of the drivers I've talked to didn't just turn it on, that they have said that they are really good and that they are really actually very helpful. And they were very much informed by experts and expert groups. We had Rain working with us
Right.
in
Rain
partnership.
was so helpful.
So,
Yeah.
we were working with experts and people who know how to create education in a way that really resonates with people, and they just they stay with it. And so I thought it was just beautifully done. But when you think about 30 minutes of content, nobody's being forced to watch 30 minutes of content who sign up on an app, okay? So that's an undertaking in and of itself for us to get that much, because that's a lot of education, that's a lot of awareness going out, that when you think about it is really a big deal to have been able to get that much content out and be a requirement for drivers. That is really impactful. So,
Totally. And like, we Story Farm's 16 years old. We've done a bunch of different projects over the years, but this project really stands out just in the handful of top things I've ever done in my career, just to think of, and we've ever done, just to think of the impact that it really has, because probably that driver watches that 30 minutes of content, and what they've learned doesn't just affect them in the car, in the job. They take that education throughout their life.
they do. And that, that's, it is such, you just think about sexual misconduct and sexual violence, which a lot of those videos really focus on. It's a global epidemic. It's an epidemic that, you know, w- groups have had a really difficult time really making any dent in for many a years. And so to get that kind of education in front of people, like people don't get that type of education in front of them. They don't. You don't take a class in school on that. You don't. It's just not where it lives now in a place like that. And educating drivers is so powerful, and how that can extend beyond that platform. So it's really beyond what we can even comprehend. I think how impactful that is and how many people it's reached. Because we're talking millions, John. We're not talking a
So
few.
cool to think
We're
about. Yeah,
talking
it's really
millions
incredible.
and millions of drivers, and how, and when we create meaningful impact and when we do things that are for a higher good, it creates this ripple effect, and it does go beyond many of those people. So we have no idea how many people that education has actually touched and influenced, and that's huge. And I thank you for being a part of that, because you can't just use any organization, any company in the creation of these type of things. It is every word, every movement, every piece of that education um, has to be treated with so much care, and it
Yeah.
has to be right. It has to be done really, really well. because the
Yeah.
last thing we want is for there to be unintended harm that comes from something we create. Um, that would be the last thing we would want. Or, we create impact on a survivor or a victim
Right.
who may be a
Right.
driver who's watching these things. So we want, all people to walk away from it and say, wow, that was powerful, but I felt very not only empowered, but I felt like if I'm a victim or a survivor, that I feel like, gosh, I really feel cared for because of this. I feel like actually there's somebody out there who really cares about this and they're really trying to stop this, and they're trying to disrupt it. So that is really hard to create that experience, that type of education that resonates, which also does not cause unintended harm, because there's a lot of education that is created in this space out there that does create harm because of the way it was done, because of the language that's used, because of the approach that was taken. That happens a lot. There's a lot of education out there that just misses the mark. This education was right on, and experts all agreed that it was done right, and it was done in partnership with the right people or right organizations to help inform it. And then we had a great partner in you and Story Farm in helping us really, create something beautiful. Like, it's like a piece of artwork at the end of the day. You created
Yeah.
something very beautiful and impactful.
That's so cool. And, we consider ourselves a trauma informed agency, and we deal with a lot of clients in sort of the spaces where being trauma informed is required. But,
Yeah,
I think a lot of people don't think about that there could be something you put in an image, a word, a phrase, something that could re traumatize someone who
that's
has
right.
been through something already. And that is the last thing we would want to do with this stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And absolutely, and that would be what I would tell people who are listening in, right? If you're going to create education, not just in the space of sexual violence, you're talking about any form of violence, you want to make sure that it's trauma informed. And working with companies who are trauma informed, or working with a company that's open to also being educated and becoming trauma informed is really important. And even though being a trauma informed agency and organization, I mean, I don't want to assume, but I think you probably came out of that experience even more educated
Oh
and
my
more
goodness.
informed than you were previously. And you wouldn't want to continue doing this and create an arm to focus in this area, not just because you're a business, because you can create impact if you were not informed in that space to be able to do it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's so cool to think, Tracy, that it's still being shown to all the drivers all over the world. Um, I think sometimes about like it's midnight, all of the situations that are happening in Ubers all over the world.
Yeah.
That's a lot of humanity doing a lot of stuff, and I
Yeah.
think this education is probably really, really impactful. All right,
Yes.
Tracy, you have done it. You have succeeded in being the guest of the first two shows.
Love it.
Amazing. I
Love it.
thank you so much for your time, and I thank you for the work you do. Like you said, this kind of work requires a little bit more than just, this is my job. There's got to be some
Yeah.
passion for it and some real desire to create impact and change. And I think you and your
Yeah.
career have made a lot of impact and change
Mm.
in the trust and safety space. And so I'm thankful to you
Yeah.
and thankful for your time.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging me and my work. I've been doing this for about 2 decades now, and I've committed my life to it, and and I'll continue to serve and try to prevent harm wherever it shows up and when it comes into my space. So thank you for acknowledging that, and thank you for having me.